Alright, well, welcome ladies and gents. Rush shooting. Alec Baldwin has been charged with involuntary manslaughter over the fatal shooting of Halyna Hutchins. Now, we do have an update on this already. This was 5 minutes ago, but his attorney has already come out and made a statement. Oh, interesting. This has gone on for far too long. Now. And it's interesting that this has now come to a head. We had some hints that this might, be happening. Now, the 64-year-old actor is one of three, which is, has been criminally charged over the October 2021 shooting. I mean, we're in 2023 now. Like I said, this has gone on for far too long. Now, involuntary manslaughter, I'd say that about fits the bill, really. That's not really anything you can argue with too much, in fairness. So let's take a look. Let's take a look at this, and we'll kind of see what we think. And I've been covering this extensively here on the channel. Alec Baldwin has been charged with 2 counts of involuntary manslaughter over the fatal shooting of cinematographer Halyna Hutchins on the Rust movie set. Now, there was a lot that came out about this at the time. So much information had been dropped, and the FBI even come out and said there's no way that this could have just gone off in the way that it did. And it's just one of those things. Now, I'm not saying that the FBI are entirely honest at all times, but there's also no reason for them to lie about this and frame someone who toes the line that they look to push. But Baldwin, who is 64, is one of 3 cast and crew members facing charges over the accidental October 2021 shooting. New Mexico First Judicial District Attorney Mary Carmack Altweez announced on Thursday, so today. The first Assistant Director David Halls has agreed to plead guilty to the charge of negligent use of a deadly weapon, and you know what, unfortunately, that is about right based on all the information we have. So the fact that he's agreeing to plead guilty, maybe he's got a deal in there, I don't know, but kudos to him. Now, of course, there's the film's armourer, Hannah Gutierrez Reed. She's been charged with 2 counts of involuntary manslaughter in the shooting. Now, each charge carries a maximum of 18 months in prison. So, yeah, this will probably be reduced anyway. Now, in a statement, the District Attorney, Ms. Carmack Altweez, said, after a thorough review of the evidence and the laws of the state of New Mexico, I've determined that there is sufficient evidence to file criminal charges against Alec Baldwin and other members of the Rust film crew. On my watch, no one is above the law and everyone deserves justice. And you know what? When I read that and I say it out loud, it does sound an awful lot like it is aimed specifically at Alec Baldwin, because he kind of paraded all of this around, and it was quite grotesque. He did that awful interview where he, was basically saying, crying out loud and just saying the most awful things. And essentially he seemed really happy to just not, just sort of flaunt the fact that he thought he was above the law. And it was patently obvious that he thought that. They in New Mexico, they had a warrant out for his phone. He then went off to New York, refused to send it in. Loads of issues, and then also was running around saying, I'm absolutely, agreeing with everyone. I'm going to do exactly what I'm asked. But you weren't, though, Alec, because you didn't send your phone in. So many things where, he said one thing and was doing another. Now, Andrea Reeb, a special prosecutor appointed by the DA to the case, said that the evidence showed a pattern of criminal disregard for safety on the set of Rust film set. It's an interesting wording. For safety on the set of Rust film set. Strange. And that is true. We had reports. It seems that the reports were true anyway, because we heard reports that there was evidence that people were just shooting after hours and messing around with guns and things. The crew decided to leave because safety was being disregarded. It wasn't being taken seriously. And that's why on the day that there was, a random film crew come in outside of unions, etc. Now that seems to confirm that as well. Now we had another statement, again from Andrea Reeve. She says, if any one of these three people, Alec Baldwin, Hannah Gutierrez Reed or David Halls, had done their job, Halyna Hutchins would be alive today. It's that simple. In New Mexico, there is no room for film sets that don't take our state's commitment to gun safety and public safety seriously. And yet, again, it's very difficult to argue with that statement, right? If Alec Baldwin had done his job properly as producer, listen to all of the on-set safety issues that were being voiced, fine, wouldn't be an issue. If Hannah Gutierrez Reed had done her job properly and actually checked the gun for live rounds or checked the rounds to see if they were blanks, she'd still be alive. Halyna Hutchins. If David Halls had done his job properly as safety officer, again, then Halyna Hutchins would be alive. It's this chain of custody and chain of safety that just broke down. And again, it's very difficult to argue with Andrea Reeve stating that if any one of them had done their job properly, Halyna Hutchins would be alive. Now, we had a statement from the attorney, Luke Nichols, and he described the charges as a terrible miscarriage of justice, and said specifically this decision distorts Halyna Hutchins' tragic death and represents a terrible miscarriage of justice, which I completely disagree with. I don't think it distorts anyone's death at all. I think if someone dies, there needs to be some form of responsibility put somewhere, especially when it is so patently obvious. And we also have to remember that there needs to be a deterrent set out there for people not to make these same mistakes, whether they are mistakes or not. They're not being charged with murder, they're being charged with involuntary manslaughter. So the charge seems to fit the crime. Now, Mr. Baldwin had no reason to believe that there was a live bullet in the gun. True, but he was also a producer, and he was there as safety, right? Like, people reported to him things. But whatever. The attorney continues and says, or anywhere on the movie set. Well, if people were shooting after hours, maybe. He relied on the professionals with whom he worked, who assured him the gun did not have live rounds. We will fight these charges and we will win. I'll be intrigued to see what happens. I will honestly be intrigued to see what happens. Ms. Carmack-Altwies explained that the two separate counts were for underlying negligence and involuntary manslaughter in the commission of a lawful act. Under the terms of Hall's plea deal, he will serve a suspended sentence and 6 months probation. Ms. Carmack-Altwies said her office had received a final report from the Santa Fe Sheriff's Office on the 27th of October last year. Bloody, they take their sweet time. The charges will be filed in New Mexico court before the end of the month, and once the charges are entered, the district attorney said further evidence supporting the charges will be released. So, I'll do a report on that, and that'll be interesting to see what happens there as well. Because it's pretty standard practice that people come out and spout nonsense, but we'll see what happens when the evidence is released to the public. Now, Ms. Carmack-Altwies also added, there is a very clear process for pursuing justice in this case. We are committed to upholding the integrity of that process to ensure equal justice under the law. So according to affidavits from law enforcement, the accidental shooting occurred as Alec Baldwin was discussing a gunfight sequence. We know this, we've even seen the footage, and or not of the actual thing, but just prior to it happening. So there we have it. I mean, this is kind of it. There's not much else going on here in terms of information-wise. It's kind of one of those things that you just go, well, finally, something's happened. Again, this happened in 2021 in October. So we're now 2023, coming to the tail end of January. So yeah, I'm glad that something has finally happened. Good. And again, involuntary manslaughter does seem to fit the incident that has occurred. The charges seem to fit the crime. Someone has died. So there you have it, guys. I'd love to hear any and all of your thoughts. Please do drop them down below in the comment section. I'll be keen to hear. I'll be intrigued to see where you land on this. Lots of people still supporting Alec Baldwin. Again, I'm not saying that he should be the one to check everything. All my statements with respect to this are primarily about the safety as a producer. He should have been, the eyes and ears of the safety. People knew that there were people shooting after hours. He knew that. It was being reported. A whole film crew walked down. He'd have known why. It's a bit obtuse to think otherwise. So there you have it. Let me know down below. Cheers guys, take care.